Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by co-host Matt Carter, and we've got an action-packed week episode here for you. 2 commits in one night for football, plus baseball won the regional in Ruston, Louisiana. They move on to the Super Regionals. We'll break all of that down, but before we jump into this episode, this podcast is brought to you in part by JFQ Lending. As we blitz into 2021, JFQ Lending wants the Wolfpacker.com members to take advantage of historically low mortgage rates. JFQ Lending has a Better Business Bureau A rating with over 2,000 reviews. They work with top lenders and do the hard work of finding the best deal for you. If you're curious whether refinancing your mortgage is a good decision, visit jfqlending.com today. That's jfqlending.com. And for our listeners at home, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. Apple, Spotify, Google. We're on all of those. Plus, you can always listen to us on thewolfpacker.com, where you should use promo code PACK60 for full access to our premium content, news, and analysis. A lot of recruiting news this month, so it's a great time to take advantage of that promo code PACK60 because it's going to unlock a lot of content on thewolfpacker.com for you. Please remember to also subscribe and give this video a thumbs up on our YouTube channel. And drop a few comments while you're at it. You know, had a few videos on our YouTube channel the past few. Haven't had any comments, so would love to hear some feedback. What you like, what you don't like. Any comment is a good comment. So drop us a comment in our YouTube video if that's the way you listen to this podcast or watch this podcast. But either way, we appreciate you listening. Matt, let's jump right into football recruiting. So a little inside baseball for the listeners at home. Rare coincidence here that both Matt and myself were at the NHL Carolina Hurricanes versus Tampa Bay Lightning Game 5 playoff game last night. And I'm pulling into the parking lot, and I get a frantic call from Matt saying, "We got a commitment." So shout out to our managing editor, Ryan Tice, saving the day, because little did we know at the time, another commitment was coming in. So 2 commitments within 30 minutes of each other on a Tuesday night when Matt and I are both at a hockey game away from our computers to put up that story on the Wolfpacker.com. So again, huge shout out to Ryan Tice for getting that story up. And the news is that, first of all, Torren Wright, 4-star linebacker, Rivals top 250 guy, is one of the commitments. We've also got a commitment from Daejuan Thompson. He's an athlete from Whiteville, North Carolina, 3-star athlete, being recruited as an outside linebacker by most schools. Matt, you might have a little bit more insight as you were at the camp this past weekend. I know you didn't see these guys up close because they took their official visits here this week, but Matt, just your instant reaction to this news, because it seems like recruiting is really, really picking up here strong early on in June. I know it was a little bit of a slow start this year, and you kept reminding subscribers to the site to stay patient. It's going to come. And as soon as that dead period ended at the beginning of June, it's like the floodgates have been opened, and now all of a sudden the commitments are rolling in 2 in one night, 2 within 30 minutes. That's pretty special. So A, the NC State coaching staff must be doing something right, but B, there must be something going on here with that dead period ending where, you know, these recruits are just so excited to get out in person and, you know, visit these campuses and meet the coaches in person, meet the other players, etc., that maybe that excitement just leads to, you know, some commitments early on in the process, and that can be good for everybody involved.
Yeah, we'd be remiss if we didn't add that Nick Campbell committed Sunday evening on his official visit, defensive lineman from Lake Mineola, Florida High School, which came right in. It's kind of inside baseball again. You know, I was up and taking a day off with my daughter in Williamsburg, Virginia, and taking her to Busch Garden to celebrate the end of the school year. And he commits, I think, that night during the middle of a baseball game, which Justin is covering because I'm off. And so Justin had to do fortunately, the rain delay came right when he committed, I think, right? It literally.
It was like fate. It was like fate, yeah. Matt. But I apologize for even forgetting that. It seems like old news now because we've got I mean, I can't remember us ever doing a podcast where we're breaking down 3 commitments in a matter of, 72 hours? So,
Yeah.
lot to
Typically, kind of how Interstate operates in June, but in this particular case, I think it's just a byproduct of, you get a squeeze, if that makes sense in recruiting. We call it a squeeze, where players start realizing that scholarships may not be like they enjoy the process, they want to go through the process, but they start realizing if I wait too much longer, I'm not going to have a spot for me at the school I really like. And so that comes into it, and then you start seeing a snowball trickle down effect. And, that's just kind of the nature of it. I don't know if that played into this particular case, but you and I talked about how in the 2022 class, the numbers are so tight across the country because of the scholarship crunch due to freezing the eligibility for COVID last year. You got a 1-year reprieve going over 85, but from all intents and purposes, you're going back down to the 85 scholarship limit, which limits how many players you can realistically sign. So my guess is that kind of been a message put out there, like, hey, we want you, but I can't guarantee you're going to have space if you keep waiting to commit. So what are you waiting on? And, in the case of Daejuan Thompson, Torren Wright had literally I talked to Thompson Tuesday morning. Torren Wright had just literally committed minutes before he was going into Doran's office. Like, Wright was coming out, Thompson was going in.
Right.
It's not I don't think it's NC State's intention to take more than a couple linebackers in this class. So, if you're Thompson and you just realize that, there's a limited number of spaces available for potential linebackers, and the guy walking out of the office just took one of the spots.
And he's a top 250 guy too.
Yeah. So, he told me he didn't know that Torren Wright had actually committed until like a second or two later, but I mean, he knew that he had just committed. So, that does kind of play into it. And I think you'll see that across the country where some of the squeeze gets put in and said, hey, look, we only have X amount of scholarships available. So you're playing with fire if you want to wait. And I think all 3 of these guys are quality pickups for NC State. Obviously, Torren Wright is the highlighter of the group. He's the Rivals 250 guy, I think number 244 in the country, a 4-star, the second 4-star in the class. I think he's listed at about 6'3", 215 from Kannapolis. He plays for a very good high school program at A.L. Brown. If you watch Thompson's film, it's really impressive. Very athletic, flies around the field. I mean, the question with him with the size, he's 6'3", probably 185, 190 pounds. So obviously, it's going to take some time for him to get bigger and stronger, but you love the athleticism. And in modern college football, you need linebackers that can run. And then in the case of Nick Campbell, he's the 3rd brother to be playing college football at some level. A legit 6'3", 270. He plays on a 3-man front in high school. Actually plays some nose tackle and 3 technique defensive tackles. So, a guy that could potentially bulk up to 300 pounds and be a nose for you potentially, or it could be a defensive tackle. He fits what they want. And again, a guy that was well recruited. He's a top 100 player in Florida, which is like being a top 25 guy in North Carolina. And he, had official visits lined up to, I think, Nebraska, Virginia, West Virginia. I know Missouri and Virginia Tech. So those are good schools. You're fishing in a good pond, as I like to say in recruiting, with the guys like Nick Campbell. So
the physical tools almost remind you. The physical tools almost remind you a little bit of Savion Jackson. Am I far off on that, Matt?
Mm-hmm. Size-wise, they sound similar. Savion had a nice explosive burst. Obviously I've not driven down to Orlando, Florida area to watch Nick Campbell play football, so I don't know but he did look good in some of the Rivals clips. He was at a Rivals camp recently and looked pretty good. So
He fits the
good kid
bill
too.
of what the Wolfpack is looking for their three-man defensive
absolutely.
front.
And you mentioned a good name there, Savion Jackson. That's not exclusively the body type they're looking for, but he fits. He's kind of the prototype, him or a Davin Van for a three-man front. They're kind of 6'3", coming out of high school, 280 type guy. That's kind of the prototype of what they're looking for.
I was going to mention a quote here from Adam Friedman. We have the story that he interviewed, Torren Wright, the 4-star that committed on Tuesday. In that interview, a quote from Wright was, "Daejuan Thompson happened to be there today too. I had committed while I was there and I was leaving. I basically just looked at him and asked him, what was taking him so long? I'm going to recruit everybody to come here. Work starts on that today." So not only is it a big pickup for NC State, but he's already putting his recruiting cap on and going to work for NC State, which it's kind of a snowball effect in recruiting. The more big recruits you land, the more success you're going to have down the road. And NC State's off to a really great start here with 2 4-stars and its first 5 commitments here. So more to come here in June. Another interesting nugget I found on Twitter, it came from @Rivals Woody on Twitter, Woody Womack, social media guy at Rivals and Yahoo Sports. But the nugget was, at this time last year, this was tweeted on Tuesday, June 8th. At this time last year, there were 628 Power 5 commitments in the 2021 class. Today, there are 387 for 2022. So it kind of shows you the rate of how many scholarships have been able to be accepted and how many commits have been able to, go ahead and announce their decision at this point. And like you mentioned, if you're sitting there and you've got a good scholarship offer and everything kind of checks out, there's not a lot of benefit right now because of the scholarship crunch to hold out and wait, for greener days ahead. If you've got something good right in front of you, it's probably a wise move to go ahead and take it. So that's kind of what you're seeing here, and that's why I think it's going to be a more action-packed summer as we move along through the month of June into July. But Matt, did you break down Torren Wright as well? I know you kind of broke down Thompson and you broke down Nick Campbell a little bit, but Torren Wright obviously comes in with, on paper, a great commitment here. Yeah,
and actually, Rivals redid its rankings, and so he passed MJ Morris, the quarterback commit, the highest rated commit in the class now. So he's the headliner at the moment, and look, he got the size and the speed and the athleticism you're looking for in the top linebacker. And in the case of Torren Wright, this is a guy NC State knows well. They've recruited him since his first day at A.L. Brown almost. They've known him for a long time. He was on campus, I believe, for 7-on-7 the summer before he started high school. So, I think the longevity of that relationship ended up paying off for NC State. Quite a few other offers. Michigan was a headliner in that group.
South Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia.
Yeah, I think he had narrowed it down to Duke, NC State, and West Virginia. I was a little surprised he went ahead and committed, to be honest, because he just kind of narrowed it down to those 3 maybe last week. So, that in my mind, that leads me to believe he already knew, and he was setting up the announcement in hindsight, like, here's my final 3, and here comes my announcement type of deal. So, but NC State had quite a few other 4-star potential out there, by the way. So I mentioned in a war room how, it might be a long shot if you really look at it, but it's not a unrealistic possibility that they could end up with the most 4-stars ever in a Dave Dorn recruiting class at NC State if all the chips fell the right way.
And this week is case in point why the 2020 season was so important for NC State to have a good year, go 8-4 off of a disappointing 4-8 campaign in 2019. You look back at the 2020 class, and I mean, it's pretty incredible what they were able to do considering they were coming off of a 4-8 season, but it's so much easier to sell the excitement when you're winning and you've got, okay, look, the last 3 of the past 4 years we've had 8 or more wins. That's a much easier sell than, come on, come help us. We just went 4-8. So, when you're compared to Duke, who's struggling right now, a lot easier sell because these kids want to win. And winning is probably the best sales pitch ultimately at the end of the day you can present.
Yeah, and Thompson also, by the way, was pretty much a Duke. He told me he was pretty much down to Duke and NC State. So as you noted, two big selling points between NC State and Duke right now. Duke has kind of been in a multi-year struggle, and NC State proved that 2019 was an aberration. So you always recruit off what you did your previous year. I think the misconception a lot of people have is if we go 9-3 this fall, our recruiting will finish really strong. It doesn't really work that way. You're recruiting off what you did last year. So this recruiting class will be a reflection of that 8-4 season, 7 ACC wins, and in the case of NC State, they probably wish they had a full recruiting class to give out and be a little bit more aggressive with this. But alas, that's not meant to be.
Well, it's going to be a quality over quantity. How about that?
Yeah.
Good approach.
Yeah.
I don't think the fans will have any problem with that. Plus, you get some familiar faces coming back for an extra year and the lateral process of that there. So lots of great stuff on the Wolfpacker.com. Go take advantage of that promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content news and analysis. A lot of our premium content news and analysis is about recruiting, and this is the hottest time of the year for football recruiting. So take advantage of that promo code. It'll unlock all the interviews that we have with these players, their high school coaches, parents, analysis, all kinds of great stuff. Plus, you're also going to be in the know of what's to come, because in those message boards, there's a lot of good nuggets. You can kind of find out a lot of good stuff before they actually happen, and you don't want to be behind. You don't want to be finding out as it happens on Twitter. You want to know it's coming ahead of time. So use that promo code PACK60 and get that benefit, get that knowledge. Let's move on to another good topic to talk about. Good time to be an NC State fan right now. Football recruiting's going well, and baseball's going well. NC State wrapped up a solid outing in the Ruston Regional. They beat host and top seed Louisiana Tech twice en route to a 3-0 record. Took care of business on Sunday. Did not require a game on Monday to advance to the Super Regionals. And the reward for NC State is a matchup with the number 1 overall seed, Arkansas, down in Fayetteville, Arkansas, in front of a crowd that is going to be electric. I saw videos from the Monday afternoon game, or I guess it was a Monday night game, that Arkansas had to beat Nebraska in a winner-take-all Monday matchup to advance to the Super Regionals, and that place was a full crowd. It was rowdy. It was like a football game. It was.
Yeah, they love their baseball in the SEC.
And it was a very impressive stadium too. So it's going to be a treat for NC State to go down there to Fayetteville and play in front of a crowd like that. I'm sure it's going to be like that probably for all of these games, considering this type of matchup. But if you're Arkansas, NC State isn't exactly an easy draw either. Don't let the 2 seed surprise you. NC State is playing like a 1 seed right now. Had they won the ACC championship game a couple weekends ago, or I guess last Sunday at this point, they probably would have been a 1 seed. They probably would have been a regional host, even though it would have been in a different location. But hindsight is 2020. They advanced out of their regional. They're on to the Super Regional. So, Matt, what jumps out to you about this upcoming matchup with Arkansas? I mean, we could reflect a little bit on what happened in the regionals, because I think before we jump into the opponent, Arkansas, because clearly, look, Arkansas is one of the best teams in the country. They're the favorite to win the College World Series, according to the gambling odds that I saw before the tournament started. So this is a tough matchup. There's no sugarcoating that. But if you're NC State, you've got to be coming into the series with a ton of confidence, because you got really solid outings from your pitching in the ACC championship in Charlotte a couple weekends ago. The bats were on when they won, and they got shut out for the first time all season against Duke in the championship game. Maybe a little bit of NC State stuff. I know it's a controversial topic. We'll move on to lighter things. But they move on to the regional, and the bats were on, particularly when the money was on the table in Game 3 against Louisiana Tech. They score 14 runs. Every single hitter or batter, rather, in the NC State lineup got a hit. I think everybody scored, if I'm not mistaken. But 14 runs, 14-7, very impressive outing, and the pitching was really solid over the regionals too. So, I mean, NC State has an argument to make that they're playing their best baseball of the year going into this series.
Yeah, I thought when you at the beginning of that, you said they had a real solid performance in Ruston, and I thought, oh, that kind of underselling it. They were pretty freaking great down in Louisiana Tech, and the fact that they dominated Alabama Game 1. There were no questions about that. I believe that was the game where they hit the 5 home runs by 4 different players, and that set the tone. You had to get in the winner's bracket. NC State pitching is not built to be in the loser's bracket of a regional. And then they came out and really controlled Louisiana Tech in Game 2. I mean, that was there was no real drama, no suspense about it. NC State had control of that game. Evan Justice did give up a couple of back-to-back home runs, I think, in the 8th, but that was about the only thing. And the last game on Sunday started ominously. You fell behind, I think, with 4-0 real quick, and I bet you came back and tied it, or maybe got it to 4-3, and then it was 5-3. But then, again, once Devontae Brown, I think it was, hit the grand slam to put NC State up by 4, 9-5.
Yep.
And then they just kept adding runs, and you're just like, they're golden. They got this. And so to win in lopsided fashion in 3 straight games, 2 of them against a regional host, it's a pretty strong showing for NC State. To your point about Arkansas, that's a different animal. Look, I think we're not going to be shocking people and saying that you and I probably haven't watched a whole lot of Arkansas baseball during the course of the year. But when you look at the numbers, to go 22-8 in the SEC, they went 29-6 at home. In baseball, if you win in 29 out of 35 games, that's not good. That's like unfreaking real, right? I mean, you're happy to get 60% of your wins in baseball. 49-11 overall. And if you look at the lineup, I mean, I got 6 guys who have double-digit home runs. 5 of those 6 have at least 13 home runs. That's a lot of power. I don't know the stadium dynamic at Arkansas, or if it's a ballpark that's conducive for homers, but if you look at how many home runs their opponents hit, 48, and Arkansas has 102 homers. So I think it's more likely a byproduct of the lineup that Arkansas puts on the field. And the pitching, if you're not going to be the number 1 team in the country if you don't have pitching. And they have a lights out closer too. I mean, who put up unbelievable numbers. If you look at Kevin Kopps,
I got his numbers right in front of me, Matt, and it's scary. His ERA is 0.68 in 79.2 innings pitched. He has 11 saves. He's 12-0 this season in 31 appearances, and he also pitched 6 2/3 innings in the Monday matchup that clinched the regional against Nebraska. So he's
and look at the strikeout numbers. Look at the walking strikeouts in the pitch.
120 strikeouts, 15 walks.
Yeah. That's so I mean, that gives Arkansas the ability to shorten the game up. I mean, and being a super regional, you ride your horses at this point. I mean, you'll ride it until the arm dies. So realistically, if you're NC State, you have to have a lead by the 6th inning, or otherwise you're in a lot of trouble. And so that's where Arkansas, they got all that power, and they have an incredible ability to shorten the game up because they got probably college, I'm going to guess, they got college baseball best shutdown reliever in their bullpen.
He's going to be a pro. Opposing batters are batting 156 against him. That's the best on the team of anybody that's had significant, innings pitched. Probably up there in the SEC as well, if not the country. But just putting Arkansas's record in perspective, and look, we're just trying to set the tone of what kind of opponent this is. This is not to say that NC State can't go down to Fayetteville and win this series. They certainly could. They're playing their best baseball of the year, and baseball is one of those games where upsets happen. But they went 49-11 this year. That's a .817 winning percentage. They didn't lose a series all season. But I will say, if we want to, try to compare these teams, even though it's not exactly easy, particularly since they're from different conferences, they have two common opponents, Louisiana Tech and Alabama. NC State faced both of these teams in the Ruston Regional. Arkansas faced both of these teams early on in the season in March. Arkansas won both of those series, but Alabama and Louisiana Tech were both able to win one game against Arkansas. And one of those games in the Louisiana Tech series went to extra innings. Arkansas needed 10 innings to defeat the Bulldogs 9-7 in the series opener. They crushed Louisiana Tech 8-1 in Game 2, and then Louisiana Tech shut them out in Game 3 2-0 to get one victory there. Alabama destroyed Arkansas in that series opener 16-1. Arkansas took care of business 9-1, 3-1 to win the series in Games 2 and 3. But maybe gives you a little bit of confidence in the sense that two teams that NC State handled rather easily, I would say, in the regional setting, have both shown that they can compete with Arkansas. So, if you're going to do the transitive property here, NC State's better than those two teams, and those two teams were as good as anybody against Arkansas this year. So maybe that gives you, some hope that NC State can figure something out and win two games this weekend, starting Friday at 6:30, I believe.
Yeah, and look, there's also, if you look at Arkansas' schedule, there are quite a few. They did not lose a series this year. That's a fact. But there were a handful of times they had to get the win on Game 3 Sunday. It's not like, they had the series clinched every single time by the time they got to Sunday. I mean, there were times where they impressively, like, they swept Florida. But look, they had to go to the last game against Tennessee. Tennessee and Arkansas split the first two games. Arkansas won the series by winning Game 3. All three games were decided by one run. Georgia and Arkansas split the first two games. Arkansas won Game 3 by a couple of runs. South Carolina and Arkansas split the first two games. Arkansas won the last game on Sunday. So there are examples of that. Ole Miss, same thing. Auburn, same thing. In fact, all three of those games were decided by a run. So there are Alabama was another example. I've been going on and on, but you get the point that there were a handful of series where Arkansas had an impressive ability to take Game 3 of it after the first two games had been split. And quite a few of those were one-run games at the end. So that's not to say that their record is misleading. I do believe you are what your record says you are, and that they're the deservingly number one team in the country. It's just, they may not be invincible, if that's the best way. And at some point, when you have that kind of a streak going, at some point it catches up to you. You can't win every single three-game series you're going to play, and so you got to figure at some point it catch up to them. And this is probably going to be either this, or if it wasn't, either the Super Regional or the College World Series Championship Series are the only other options for them to snap that streak. So if you're NC State, maybe that's the best way to approach it. Like I told people, when Duke beat NC State for the ACC title, I said I wouldn't want to be Duke baseball right now. They'd won like 12 or 13 games in a row. In baseball,
you called it.
In baseball, you're thrilled to win 5 games in a row. At 13, the shoe is dropping on you at some point. They did not look good in the regional. They got their butt kicked twice and quickly bounced from the regional. So
they got smoked by Liberty twice, right?
Yeah, I believe. And it's just like, You always know that. I mean, you kind of want to get a couple of losses. I always feel like before you start. It's like in the NCAA tournament in basketball. Never pick the team that's going in on like a 13, 14 game winning streak or something ridiculous like that, because they're due for a game where they're going to shoot 23% from the field or miss half of their free throws and lose. So maybe Arkansas do. Right? They had a magical season. Maybe they're due for a tough series.
Well, I do agree with you, Matt, in the sense that no team is invincible. But man, you're a tough grader if the hairs you're gonna split is well, they had to win game 3 of the series so that they could win.
I'm trying to find reasons for trying to find something to
Matt,
grab onto.
That's like saying, well, yeah, Alabama football went undefeated during the season, but they were within. The other team was within one possession a couple times during the fourth quarter. They still won, right? But hey, look, I'm not giving you a hard time because I understand you're trying to, put some positive spin here for the Wolfpack fans listening. But I want to remind Wolfpack fans how challenging of an opponent this is, because when and if NC State does go down to Fayetteville and win this super regional, it should be heavily, heavily celebrated, because this would be one heck of a feat. I mean, the winner that comes out of this super regional has to be considered one of the favorites to take home the prize in Omaha. Because if NC State goes down to Fayetteville and hands the Razorbacks their first series loss of the season, well, they took out number 1. So who's to say that they can't take out anybody else once it narrows down to 8 teams? So this is really exciting.
Let's go back a little bit too. You remember that Nebraska and Arkansas split their first 2 games. Arkansas won the first game, put Nebraska into the losers bracket. Nebraska came back and beat Arkansas to force that decisive do-or-die regional final. And if I remember reading right, it was 2-2 going to the 8th inning. And Arkansas got a 4-run 8th inning to pull away and win the game. So, yeah, again, my real motivation is I wanted to help ESPN and the ratings out. So I'm trying not to. I want NC State fans to tune in and help out the ESPN ratings.
No, I don't want them to tune in. I want them to tune in to the Wolfpacker.com. We will have live updates for you.
Fair point.
So if you guys have plans, if you guys want to go play golf this weekend or enjoy the weather, hopefully the rain clears out in the Raleigh area, don't worry. We at the Wolfpacker will have you covered with inning-by-inning updates on the Wolfpacker.com front page. So if you got other plans, you got a birthday party to attend, you got an anniversary coming up, don't worry if you miss a game. We got you covered. We will have you covered on the Wolfpacker.com. Word of advice for NC State baseball, maybe get some runs on the board before Kevin Kopps comes in the game. Just you might want to have a lead before that happens, because you don't.
He won't come in the game, right? So if you get a lead, and the best scenario for NC State, I'll say that best case scenario for NC State. They get a lead. They win game 1. Kevin Kopps never comes in. They get a quick lead in game 2, and that'll force Arkansas to turn to Kevin Kopps right away. And then at that point, no matter what happens, he's probably having to pitch 5-6 innings, and he can't go. I mean, they may bring him out there Monday, but he sure won't be as effective as normal, and basically worn out the ace of the bullpen. So that's the best case scenario, that you win Friday. I believe that's a 6 p.m. first pitch, if it doesn't rain.
6 p.m. ESPNU.
Yeah, College World Series. Every year, without fail, it seems like every single regional has rain issues at some point. But the best case scenario is you win that Friday game, and then you get a quick lead on Saturday and force Arkansas to go to the deepest of this pen right away. And then that'll put you in a position where even if you don't hold on to that lead on Saturday and you somehow lose it, you're still better off for Monday to finish it off. Or Sunday or whenever Game 3 is.
Well, to win Game 1, NC State's going to have to expose Arkansas's ace a little bit. Patrick Wicklander, 6-1 this season, 2.17 ERA, the best of the starters on the Arkansas staff. He's got 79 strikeouts, 22 walks this season. Opposing batters are batting .222 against him. But he has let up 11 doubles, so maybe it's JT Jarrett time, Mr. Double. He's hit a lot in the postseason so far, so maybe he's got a few more in him. Gives you a nice little spark when your ninth batter's hitting like that. But
he's playing really well.
I mean, if you look at the stats comparatively, with the batters, NC State has an argument to make that it might have a better offense. I mean, at least at the top end. They've got 4 guys batting .320 or better. Arkansas's got one guy batting over 300. It's Charlie Welch. He's batting .375, so he's having a heck of a season. Arkansas has plenty of guys that are in the high 200s, batting average-wise, so they've got the depth. But top end, NC State might have a little bit more elite hitters at the top of their lineup.
What stands out about Arkansas is that power. That's a lot of home runs in their lineup. And NC State has a lot of power in its lineup. They're 2 teams that can get the ball over the fence. And it's going to come down to which team pitching staff can keep the ball in the park more consistently. And I should add, Evan Justice has really blossomed as a closer for NC State. He can go 3+ innings himself. So, he may not have the production of Kevin Cobb, but if NC State had a 3 or 4 run lead into the 5th or 6th inning, they have the ability to really shorten it up by bringing Evan Justice into the game at that point.
NC State has 5 batters with 12 or more homers this season. Arkansas has 5 batters with 13 or more homers this season. They also got a guy, Cullen Smith, who's had 10. So 6 guys with double-digit homers on the Razorbacks, 5 with double-digit homers on the Wolfpack. So power on power. You probably have to give the pitching advantage to Arkansas. My apologies to the Wolfpack staff. They've been dealing. But that has been the bugaboo all season. Hopefully the postseason heat continues. They stay sharp. They're going to need to against this Arkansas team. It's going to be a great series. I think Wolfpack fans should be very excited. And remember, don't worry if you got to go do something this weekend, if you got to miss the game. No worries. Just head over to the Wolfpacker.com or download our app, the Rivals app, and get on the Wolfpacker.com that way, mobile, and just check out the updates. We got you covered. And we'll put the highlights in there, too, so that you can watch it as it unfolds as well. But anyways, that'll do it for this podcast episode. A lot to break down there. So, again, one last reminder, use that promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on thewolfpacker.com. Unlock 60 days of free premium content news and analysis for you over there at our site. And there's a lot of premium content news and analysis right now because recruiting is so hot. Plus, we'll have you covered with the baseball this weekend. Follow us on social media. You can give us a like on Facebook at NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. Follow us on Twitter. You can follow our main account at the Wolfpacker. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. And please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, you can always listen to us on thewolfpacker.com. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please give this video a thumbs up. And like I said earlier on in the episode, if you're still listening, please drop a comment. You've listened this long, so you must like listening to us. So drop a comment. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Whatever. Even just say go Pack if you want. I don't care. Just drop a comment. But appreciate our listeners. For Matt Carter, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.